Welcome everyone, this is Zanta with Revolve Products. Today's video is on how to create a wall sconce light that is not wall-based, that is face-based. This was a request by a YouTube subscriber, and he saw a video that I created on just how to work with generic face-based families and wanted to know how do I make a light-based fixture in that same manner. So I'm here in Autodesk Revit 2022.1, and before we create the family, I went over to did a quick Google search and found a nice little wall sconce here. It's pretty straightforward to make. So we're going to go through the process start to finish of how to make this as a face-based light fixture family. Okay, this is pretty straightforward in the sense of we have a circle that will be extruded. We have another smaller circle that will be extruded. We'll have a sweep that has a path that looks like this with a circle as a profile. We'll have an extrusion of a circle, and then we'll have a blend going from a smaller circle to a larger circle. Or we can do a revolve, so that way it's empty on the inside, and our light source will be on the inside of that light fixture. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'll do is I'll head over to Revit 2022 and I'll start a new family. I'll click New over here and head over to English Imperial. Now what we want to work with is a light fixture family. So if we scroll down and look for light fixture, you'll see that we have light fixture, wall-based, and ceiling-based. What we need to do is make one that is face-based. So they don't have a light fixture family .rft file for that function, but we can just use a generic model that is face-based, for example, right here. And if we start with this particular family, hit open, what you're presented with is a three-dimensional extrusion to act as the face of the surface that you're about to draw on. You have two reference planes here that dictate the origin of the family. If we take a look at this in 3D, what you're seeing is the surface that you're going to place the light fixture on. If we go to the front elevation of this particular view, you'll see that the light fixture we're going to create actually has to be up, curving this way with the L support, if you will. And then the blend will go from a smaller circle to a larger circle this way, because we have to kind of think about the orientation of it when you place it. When we go to create this family, if you look at this particular face-based family, there is no light source. Okay, so I'm going to back out of this just for a second so you can understand this a little bit better. If we head over to New Family again, English Imperial, and we look at light fixtures, here's one. I hit open, and in this particular one, it shows the light source. If I use SD for the keyboard shortcut to go to shaded, you'll see the light source. If we take a look at the front elevation, you'll see that excuse me, the light source is there, and it has a particular height off of the level. If I go to, say, a left elevation, you can see that here as well. So what we need to do is we need to create the light fixture with the light source in mind, and then place this light fixture in a generic face-based family so we can control the location and position of that light fixture. Now, if this is the left side, this is the front side. If we take a look at the plan view, this is what we get. So how do we approach building this? We're going to start, if we take a look at the picture, and if I'm standing this way and looking towards this light fixture, then this would be considered the front. Okay? So we need to draw and create this shade part of it, and then the sweep, and then this circular mount part of it. I'm going to head over to the front elevation, and we know we have the light source here, and we have a reference plane that defines the position of that light source, which we want to kind of use to our advantage to lock down in regards to the shape of the, I'm assuming this is either aluminum or bronze type of housing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start up here to draw the circular base mount that goes flush against the wall. So I'm going to create a reference plane up here. RP is the keyboard shortcut. Whoops, sorry. Try to draw straight here. And then we can dimension the position of that reference plane against that light source. And if we take a look at the picture, we can see that if the light source is dead center here, this distance from here to here is not that much. It's probably 6 inches or 8 inches at most. So switching back to here, I'm going to go ahead and start with, say, 9 inches, just for the sake of having some space to work with. Now we can parameterize this so that we can make the location of this base in relationship to this cone higher or lower, so that way this part of the sweep gets longer, or we'll just leave it fixed for the sake of simplicity. So if I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm going to take that 9 inches and I'm going to lock it. That way that position holds. From there, I can create that extrusion for that base. Okay. I'm also going to switch this to a different scale, say 1.5 inches, just a little bit smaller to work with. And from here, we'll create an extrusion. And we'll start with a circle. And then we'll just go ahead and place the light fixture round base. Now we can parameterize the diameter of that base as well. So we can click this icon to make that dimension permanent, visible. And then we can select that radius dimension and we can parameterize it up here in the contextual ribbon. So I'm going to click this command, and then I'm going to give it a diameter, or I'm sorry, a radius, base radius. That way, if you want to change the size of it, you can. Also, I'm going to use underscore for the spaces, just for the sake of ease. I kind of like to do that. I don't like leaving spaces. So now that I've done this, I'll finish the extrusion, and then I'll take a look at it from the left side so you can see how it's being positioned and where it's going. Now, if we take a look at the picture again, that base is against the wall. This is going to extend out and down. So that means that this light source is out here, which means the extrusion of the base needs to be somewhere along here. So I'll create a reference plane over here that kind of acts like the face of the surface that we're about to touch when we use generic face-based. I'm going to dimension that as well here. We'll put it up here. And then we can parameterize this dimension so that we can dictate how long this part is going to be too, if we want to make it longer or shorter. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to go ahead and parameterize it and call it distance off of wall. Something simple like that. And now that we parameterized it, I can select the reference plane, and I can see it says the name of the reference plane as well. So if I select this command up here for family types and get into this dialog box, we can make that distance something easy to work with. I'm going to do 9 inches again and hit OK. All right, now that that's set, we can go ahead and create a reference plane that dictates the thickness of this plate. So I'll create a reference plane over here. Whoops. And then I'll dimension that. And again, you can parameterize this dimension to give the thickness whatever thickness you want, but I'm going to go ahead and make it a static dimension. So let's make it 1.5 inches. And to make it static, I'll just select the dimension and lock it. So now that that's done, I can select my extrusion and I can push and pull the faces of it to align and lock to the faces of the reference plane. Now, sometimes you may get that lock symbol, sometimes you don't. It just depends on how precise you are. I like to use the align command with the lock function. So in Revit 2022, they changed the align command. So you can see up here, you have choices for multiple alignment, lock, and what it prefers to look at from the aspect of walls. So I'm just going to use the align command like this, and it's locked. This one over here as well, and it's locked. And if we just look in 3D, all we have right now is just a simple cylinder. See? And that's going to act as our base. Same kind of sequence to create this little smaller circular ring that holds that sweep. So we'll head back to the front elevation and we'll create another extrusion. So create extrusion, another circular one, and then using that intersection. And then I'll just make it, I guess 3/4 inch thick is fine. From the picture, it's a little hard to tell the size. So if we assume that this is 9 inches and this is 9 or 10 inches, this is probably 3/4 of an inch. So I'll just leave it at that size. Maybe a hair smaller. So let's go ahead and come in here and change it to 1/2 inch. Okay, so now that that's finished, finish the extrusion command, again, head back over to the left elevation. And this time, push and pull what you need. Again, as well, create a reference plane for how far it's going to be away from that base. Okay, and I'm going to switch this again to a different scale, say 1 inch. That way the dimensions are smaller. And if I tab this reference plane, I can use this temper dimension to make it whatever I want. I'm going to make it a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to lock it, so that way we know that that's what we need for the thickness. So I'm going to align to the reference plane that extrusion. And then align to this reference plane that extrusion. Okay, and again, looking in 3D, really straightforward. See? So the next thing we want to look at is this arm bracket right here that holds it. This can be considered a sweep. It's nothing more than a circle that is pushed or pulled along a nonlinear path down to whatever distance you want. So how do we do this? If I head over back to the left elevation, we can see that we have our light source here. We want it to turn, we want it to go straight out, curve, and then come down to some distance. I'm going to create a reference plane that will act as the top of this plate right here, and another reference plane for this plate right here, and then another reference plane for this bottom edge here. So we need at least 3 reference planes. I'm going to create one right here, create another one right here, and then we'll do, since that's the light source, we'll put another one down here. All right, now we need to, when we create reference planes, we want to give them names. It's a lot easier to work with after the fact. So I'm going to select the lower one and call it bottom RP housing. Oops, let's spell that again. Bottom housing RP. I don't like that. No, let's try it again. Housing bottom RP. That's fine. And then this one here, tabbing into it, call it top housing RP. And then we'll do this here, and we'll call this upper RP housing. Okay. The naming, you can name it anything you want, just as long as you name it consistently. That's the key. Okay. Again, I'm going to dimension this to this and give it a physical hard dimension, and also dimension its position off of the light source. Okay. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to be very deliberate about where it's being positioned and how much do I want it to be. So I'm going to say 1.25 inches. Okay. And then this lower one here, we'll make this 1 inch. Okay. And then I'm going to lock this dimension so it stays that. And I'm going to lock this dimension so it stays that. Okay. So now we have a path that we're going to draw from here down to here. But we also need it to curve, right? So this is kind of a shallow amount as compared to the picture. So that's kind of longer here. So I need to fix this. I'm going to select that dimension, unlock it, and then I'm going to select that plane and change this number to something greater. Let's try 2.5 inches. Maybe that's still not enough. Let's do 3 inches. So this is one of the things too, when you're working with building a family off the cuff and looking at a picture, and that's all you have to work with. You don't actually have dimensions. So we kind of have to play with it. So now that we have that, we need to draw a model line to act as a path, because when you use a sweep command, you're going to draw a profile, which in this case is a circle, and it's going to be push and pulled along that path. Well, right now we don't have a path drawn. If we look at this in 3D, we have to draw this path out this way, curve it, and come down. So if we look at it from a top view, we know that this plane here has been given a name called light source axis. So we can make that the current reference plane and draw a path on that plane. So heading back over to the left elevation, I'm going to go over to create. I'm going to set the current plane as the light source left right. Let me double check, because naming light source left right. Correct. That's good. All right. So now that that's the current plane, I can go in and say create and give me a sweep. The first thing I'll do is I will sketch a path. Okay, and I will use this pick line method to pick this edge and pick this edge. Then I need to clean up these lines. So I'm going to use trim to corner to make that a nice clean corner. We'll come over here and we'll move the endpoint of this to where it needs to be, which is right there. And we'll lock it. This one here we'll pull up to as far as we need, which is going to be, in this case, maybe here at the most. Okay. Now we do need this to have a nice curve. So if I do, say, we can do this one. Fillet corner with a radius, and we'll just do 1/2 inch. And let's see how well that comes out. That's pretty tiny. Let's change this. Let's make this 2 inches. And try that again. There, that's better. And then in 2021 and higher, they have tangent arc locking functionality. So you want to lock this on both ends. That way, the tangency of the arcs will align and lock to the endpoints of these here. And I don't need this piece. And if we look at this in 3D, this is our path. Okay? So we've got the path part of the sweep done. Let's head back to the front elevation this time. We can finish the green check mark for the creation of the path. Then we have to draw the profile. We can either load in a profile or just sketch the profile. In this case, it's simple. We're just going to click Edit Profile and draw the circle for that round piece. So I'm going to go in here and click and drag and say 1/4 inch should be more than enough. If we look in 3D, this is what's going to happen. There's our circle, and there's the path. So if I hit the green check mark to finish the creation of the profile, I can then hit the green check mark again for the creation of the sweep. There you go. Now you have a sweep. If we look at the picture, it's close enough, right? We don't have to be super exact, but this is just for the general purposes of teaching you how to make a light fixture with the light source family, and then we'll nest it inside a generic model face-based family. What else do we have to do? We have to work with this top housing part, which is nothing more than an extrusion from top down to bottom. So I'm going to head over to the plan view, and I need to draw a circular extrusion right here. So create, extrusion, circle, pick, specify whatever size we want it to be. I'm going to make it, let's look at the picture. It's probably about twice the size of the other one. So let's do 1 1/4. That's fine. Finish it, head over to the front elevation, and so we can see what's going on. And if we head over to the 3D view, we can see where our extrusion is sitting, which is way over here. So we need to pull this up and pull this up, head over to the front elevation so we can see where it's at. And if we look at this picture, we said that we needed to be at the top here and the bottom is right here, which are these two reference planes we created earlier. So again, I'm going to use the align command and align that physical geometry. Yes, I know. It's okay. The warning that it's telling me, it says light source is inside solid geometry. No light will be emitted during the rendering. Correct, because the center of the light source right now is inside that, and I need to still do the align at the underneath, and that way that center light source, which is that little node right there, is not inside a solid piece of geometry. We do need to save our work because a lot of times I work and I forget to save, so I'm going to hit save. Head over to my computer. We'll put it under my temp drive, and we'll call it, what is this called? This is called a tumbled brass walker tapered single sconce set. Ooh, let's give it a simple name. Brass tapered sconce. We'll just do that. Brass tapered sconce. So now that we have it saved, the next thing we need to do is we need to create this nice little blend, if you will. Okay, we can either do a blend where we have a smaller circle here and a larger circle here, and then make a smaller one and core it out, or we can just do a simple revolve. I think it would be easier if we do a revolve. That way we can just draw the profile and it revolves at 360 degrees, and then inside will be empty. So if that's the case, we want to go to either a front elevation or a left elevation, however you want to orient yourself. I'm going to go to the left elevation. And because we saw that we have that plane right here, and we have this plane down here to kind of help us with the shape of it. So let's go ahead and do a revolve. Create, revolve. Now what is a revolve? A revolve is when you create a profile that's closed in Revit, and it is rotate it around an axis. And the rotation by default is 360 degrees. It can be any angle you want. In this case, 360 makes sense for us. So I'm going to start the Revolve command. And excuse me, first thing I like to do is I like to specify the axis line. So I click axis line, I use the pick line method, and I pick that. And then I lock it. That way it knows that that axis line is in agreement with that vertical reference plane. Excuse me. The next thing is we need to draw our boundary lines to help define that cone shape. So I'm going to click boundary line and use the line tool here and start drawing. If we look at our picture, we're going to be drawing from the center of that out to here, angled out, and back to the center. So I'm going to pick here, zoom in a little bit, come out to here, and then we'll bring it out to whatever angle we want. Let's look at the picture. Yes, there's no vertical. So I'll just take it out to here, and we want this to be hollow on the inside. So we only need to go just a certain amount, like 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to pick line. 1/4 of an inch is actually really thick. I'm going to do 1/16 inch for the thickness of this brass fitting, which is like that. And then I'll zoom in here, clean up the corner here. And then we come up to here. I'm going to use the align command to align that geometry earlier that we drew. And then I'm going to use the boundary line pick method with 1/16 inch again for the thickness. And it's going to be right there. And we'll trim the corner here. And then we'll draw a little line from here to here. Oops. And then we'll lock this as well. And then we'll use trim to corner to have a nice clean corner. Okay. Now, if we look very carefully, let's look at this in 3D so we can see what's going on. We're drawing very interesting straight, simple line straight down here, and it's going to get revolved around this axis 360 degrees. I'm going to hit the green check mark to finish the creation of the profile, and it's going to go ahead and revolve at 360 degrees, and this is what we get. See? So technically, the light source, even though it's in the light fixture, it's not inside solid geometry, so I don't get that warning. Now, I think that's fine. Some people will want to reposition the light source to be lower. It's up to you however you want to position it. Okay, I think the light source is a little high right now. Let's go to the left elevation and see if there is a dimension that we create for the location of the light source. And look at the front elevation. So we don't have the light source defined from the standpoint of what is its height off of the level or what is the height from the ceiling. Some people look at the height of a light fixture based upon the position against the ceiling. Others do it off of the level. So in this case, I'm going to create a dimension in the front view that dimensions the height of the light source, like so. And then I'm going to select this and parameterize it and call light source, oops, height. Because this dimension of 9 inches is locked, it automatically dictates the position of this. So if we test it, let's save our work, and let's flex it and test it. So all we need to do is look at the light source height. Let's make this 6 feet and hit OK. Does everything push up? Yes, it does. But if we look at our revolve, the base of this has stayed put. We didn't actually define this vertical position to specify the size of the cone, and it stayed together. So let's go ahead and dimension this as well. Actually, we want to dimension from here to here so we know the shape of the cone. And right now it's 1'6", which is pretty big. Let's change this to 1. And I think that's fine. And I'm going to lock that dimension. You can parameterize it, obviously, but we're going to keep it static to make the video simple and easy to understand. So again, we're going to change the light source height. Let's make it 7 feet this time and hit OK. Does it move up like it's supposed to? Yes. If we change the value to a lower number, say 5, does everything drop down like it's supposed to? Yes. Okay, so think about the position of the light in relationship to you and how tall you are and where you want that light source. So I'm going to change the height of it to be at least, I would say at least 7 feet tall. Because a lot of people are, you know, between 5'7" and 6'3" on average. So if I make it 7 feet tall, their head won't get hit. Let's look at this in 3D and let's see what we have. So this is what we have. Okay, now we haven't applied any materials, anything like that. It's pretty straightforward, very easy to do. Let's say you want everything to be a specific material. You can select all of your geometry, and then you can go over here under materials, and you can parameterize it and associate it with a material parameter that you create, say light, fixture, overall material. Now, the reason I did this is because I want everything controlled as one material. Some people will want this to be a specific material, this to be a specific material, this to be a different material. It's up to you. I'm making it simple. So here we'll go under light fixture overall material, and we want it to be, the picture looks like it is brass. So let's look up brass. And they have brass. I'm going to go ahead and click this little arrow to add it. And then we'll hit apply. If we look at the appearance tab, we're going to apply it to more of a cylinder, if anything. And hit OK. Hit OK. And now if we switch to realistic, this is what it looks like copper-wise. Okay, it's a little hard to see, but that's how it functions. Let's change this visual style back to shaded. If you leave it in realistic, it makes your system work a little harder, and if you don't have a robust system, you can kind of feel the lag. All right, so now that our light fixture is finished, save our work. Okay, I'm going to type in CI, and I created a keyboard shortcut for closing all the other inactive views. So if you go to the View tab of the ribbon, User Interface, go to Keyboard Shortcuts, you can do a search for Close Inactive. And there it is. I created one called CI. I just clicked inside here, typed in CI, hit Assign, and hit OK. It just makes life a little easier. So now that we have this family created, we need to create a generic model face-based family and nest this inside. So again, leaving this open, File, New, Family, Imperial English, and we want generic model face-based. And hit open. Okay. Now that we have this, we can pop back over to the other fixture and load it into the project. Since it's the only one that's in there, it's just going to let me place it. So I'm just going to go ahead and place it over here in space. And it gives me the warning that it can't see it because of the cut plane of this. So let's move over to a 3D view, and you can see how it gets placed. See? This is where it gets a little tricky because of how we modeled it and how this object is acting as the face of what we're touching. This has to be rotated. So if we go over to the right elevation, can we take this piece of geometry and rotate it in this direction 90 degrees? And whoa, what happened? Let's jump back to the right elevation. I want to grab all of this, rotate it. Oh, I know, my numbers lock was off. I'm sorry. 90. Enter. Cannot rotate into this position. See? So what happened is that when we modeled it, we made the wrong assumption of how it's being oriented. So this is the part of the tricky part of modeling a light fixture family and its correct orientation to be placing it on that face. So since I can't do the rotation of this object, what we may need to do is we may need to nest this inside a generic model family that we can rotate, and then take that and nest it inside. So let's test that theory. I'm going to close this file, close this, say no, and we're back inside that light fixture family that we created. I'm going to start a file, new family again. This time just generic model, and let's see if it allows me to insert it and then insert the generic model inside our generic model face-based family and rotate. So load into project, and I'm just going to place it dead center right there. Done. Type in CI to close inactive so I don't have to look at all the other views. Click the house symbol so we can see that it's placed. If we head over to the front elevation, we can kind of get an idea where it is. It's right there. All right, so now that that's placed like that, I'm going to say File, Save As, Family. And we're going to say generic light fixture. Okay, enter. All right, now CI to close all the other inactive views. I'm going to close this one because we don't need it anymore. Save our work. And now here's this generic model here's this light fixture family that's inside a generic model family. Now let's try to create a new family that is going to be generic model face-based. And let's see if we can nest inside, take this family and nest it inside the other one. So I'm going to say load into project, and then we're going to place it like so. Now we'll look at the front elevation, and this is what we get. We're going to look at the left elevation, and this is what we get. So what we need to do is we need to take this light fixture and rotate it 90 degrees. So let's see if I can rotate it 90 degrees up this way. Type in 90, hit enter, and it won't let us. So we cannot fake it. We cannot trick it to doing that. So unfortunately, what we have to do now is we have to model the light fixture in the correct orientation so that when you place it inside this face-based generic one, it will work. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause the video, and then I'm going to go ahead and fix this so you don't have to watch all of this. And then I'll get back into the video to continue where I left off, so that way it just makes it a little easier. So give me a second. All right, so I'm back. What we did was as follows. I took this family that we created and I tried initially to rotate it into the correct orientation while it was nested inside a generic model face-based, and it wasn't letting me do that. I then tried to put it inside a generic model and hosted the generic model, nested it inside the face-based family, and it still did not rotate. In the end, what I had to do was create a new face-based generic family to put the structure, if you will, of the light fixture, you know, the base, the arm, the cone, everything in there. And then I created a new light fixture family with just a light source and took that and nested it inside and positioned everything where I wanted it to. Doing it this way, it made it look like the light fixture was oriented properly, and the light source is inside that. Now that that's done, we can start a new project in Revit. And I'll create a wall. And we'll look at this in 3D. We'll jump back over to the family, and we'll load it into the project. And I'm just going to physically place it on the face of the wall right here. So when I go to place it, you see its orientation is slightly off. You can use the space bar to rotate it 90 degrees. Click to place it, and it gets placed on that face. If I select the light fixture, by default it has elevation from level. If I set it to 7 feet, it should drop down. And if we look at this on the south elevation, you can see that it is 7 feet off of level 1. All right. So that's a way for you to create a light-based, a light fixture family that is face-based. Now, I placed it on a wall because it was the fastest, easiest thing to draw. If I were to say, let's draw a generic model that is slanted, let's go to the east elevation. And I'm going to come in here and purposely draw a generic model in place. We'll just call it generic model for now. And we're going to do an extrusion. Going to pick a plane. We're going to pick that plane. And we're going to make the extrusion some weird angle like this. That way you guys can see that this family can still be placed on the face of an object, not necessarily the wall. So if we look at this again in 3D, here's our geometry. And we have this angled face here, we have this angled face here, and this angled face here. So I'm going to delete this wall. And because the family is face-based, it will not disappear. If it was wall-based, the object would disappear. So I'm going to select it, type in CS to create similar, place on face, come over here, and I can place it with rotating with the space bar, see? And place it where I want. So using this family, we can place it wherever we want. So that's how you create a light fixture family that is face-based for you to place wherever you want. Thank you very much for watching.